Welcome to In the Green Room. I'm Kinga, and we are here talking with Danny Kush. Say hello.
Hello.
Fast Eddie.
Hi.
And Dr. James Neller.
This is going to be a wonderful, wonderful show. I'm looking forward to it so much.
We are talking about ASU legend Frank Kush and all his stories of why he was one of the most winningest coaches, right?
Yeah, well, he worked hard and, had some great players, a little luck. Takes a little bit more than great players.
I think it was more than luck.
Yeah, well,
I think it was his
Yeah, you
ethic.
make your own luck. You know that, Danny boy.
Yeah, you make your own luck. So.
It was his
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yep. Yeah.
So we'll get to all the details, but what do you think are the biggest secrets of how your dad was such a winning coach?
Well, I think, growing up, he grew up, it was kind of a tough life growing up. His dad was a coal miner and tough life, and he had a total of 15 kids in the family. He had 8 brothers, 5 sisters.
15 kids, that's a lot of kids.
And 3 math wizards, that's one short, but Augusta passed away at birth, so they counted 15 kids. But no, they grew up, they didn't know they were poor, but they were a coal mining family, and they...
Filled with love.
Yeah, and they didn't get electricity in the house till my dad was 14.
Wow.
And so...
Polish family.
Polish family, 3-bedroom house, 8 boys in one bed, and 6 girls in the other bed, and, that's how they grew up. They didn't know any different, and, but you had to, you had to survive. It was more survival than growing up. Especially...
So he learned how to survive.
By today's standards, yeah. So he learned how to survive, and he, as he got older, he got into his teens. He discovered athletics and football and other basketball, baseball.
It was rumored that he enjoyed going to football camps just so he could have a warm shower.
Well, that's what he figured out.
And sleep in his own bed.
When
Is
he
that
went
true?
when he went to his first football camp in high school, they all had their own beds. They all got a hot shower. And they all got fed 3 hot meals a day, and so he grew up tough love and everything else like
Tough
that.
love.
And just, that was how they survived. And it was, pretty contrary to a lot of the rest of the grown-ups. So, he did really well at high school, and he got a couple of scholarship offers. He ended up going to William and Mary for a year, realized that...
Was he All-American?
No, well,
Eddie,
at Michigan State.
Where was he All-American?
Well, he went to William and Mary his first year, freshman year. And then, I don't know how smart he was, because that's an all-boys school, and he didn't realize that. He didn't realize that until he got there. And then after that, he called up Duffy Doherty, who was an assistant coach at Michigan State, and said, "Hey, Duffy, I need you to change schools." He goes to Michigan State, has a great career at Michigan State. He ends up being an All-American his senior year at Michigan State. They also win the national championship his senior year.
Yeah.
I think in the 3 years he played at Michigan State, they lost 2 games in 3
Absolutely
seasons.
amazing.
That is just
And then
incredible.
he took the Spartans to a championship,
Yeah.
national championship
Yeah.
his senior year.
Yeah, senior year they were national champions.
Absolutely fantastic.
So after, when to make some extra money when he was in Michigan State, he was in ROTC. And this was in the early 50s. And when you're in ROTC, you owe the Army or whatever branch you're in a 2-year commitment after school once you graduate.
So you graduate and you go work.
You go into the Army. He went into the Army.
Okay.
He was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia. And the base commander found out he was getting Frank Kush, an All-American from Michigan State. So the base commander made him the player coach of the base team. Because back in the 50s, it was a big deal for all these Army posts to have football squads, and they kind of played each other kind of like their own conference, and so it...
So I have a question for people that are listening that are not football, aficionados. How would you explain what an All-American is? Can you dumb it down for people that don't know football?
So there are 11 players on offense, there's 11 players on defense, and there's a handful, 3 or 4 special team players, punting, kicking, things like that. And the All-Americans is they pick one person at each position out of all the college players, and the best one joins the All-American team. And so you end up with maybe 25 players, Ed?
Yeah.
Or so.
Wow.
These are the top 25 players that year in the U.S. It's one at each position. You know?
That's a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And Ed, how was Ed a football aficionado? How did Ed get into this picture of football? Let
Well,
our listeners know how Ed is so big with football.
Well, I'm a huge booster. I
That's a big deal.
went to Arizona State.
Yeah.
I was the first 4-year college graduate of Arizona State University. Interesting story. 1958, Arizona State College had every attribute of being a university, so we petitioned the Board of Regents to become a university, which usually is just a rubber stamp. But the Board of Regents had a bunch of U of A people,
Tucson people.
Tucson, and they says, no, we want U of A Tucson to be the only university. So we went to what was called Proposition 200, where the whole state voted on whether or not Arizona State College were to become an Arizona State University. Well, lo and behold, the state voted, we won, we became a university in 1958. I graduated in 62, first 4-year graduating class.
So,
Eddie, go Eddie.
Yeah.
so Eddie's been a football fan forever. I mean, he played high school football in Chandler
Yeah.
was it Chandler Wolves back then?
Chandler Wolves.
There you
Chandler
go.
Wolves. Charlie
Chandler.
Hall was my head coach.
Yeah,
Great
so,
guy.
So he played there, and one of Fast's longtime friends, Nap Lawrence.
I met Nap.
Yeah.
Nap is a great guy.
Yeah.
Big
Nap-
supporter of ASU football.
Big supporter as well.
Huge supporter,
Nap played high school down at Eloy, and Eloy used to play Chandler. So these two guys played against each other in high school football, and then they both enroll at ASU, go to ASU, and by the luck of the draw, they get paired up as roommates in the dorm.
Really? I didn't know that.
It was
You guys are
amazing coincidence. And what was funny is that we were the last football team in Arizona to not wear face masks.
Wow.
I'm playing middle linebacker. Nap Lawrence is running back. I tackle him. He sticks his thumb in my eye. So I had some choice words and blah, blah, blah. But he remembered that when we met the first day in Arizona State.
Yeah, the
He
roommates.
said, weren't you number 23?
Yeah.
I said, how does he remember this?
Yeah.
But,
So
I remembered him because he stuck his thumb in my eye.
yeah. So Nap and Fast have arguably been throughout all the years have been some of the biggest supporters of not just ASU football.
When you say supporters, they funded ASU
Well, ASU
football.
Athletics supported ASU Athletics,
Yes.
both time, talent, treasure. I mean, they both donated huge amounts of money to all of athletics, primarily football, but also supported other programs at ASU, but also time and talent. They've been on different boards. They're still on different boards, athletic boards and things like that at ASU.
So Eddie
Yeah.
has brought me to meet so many people at ASU, and I'm so grateful and thankful, and I'm so glad you're here. And so your dad also was friends with Eddie.
Well, yeah, I mean, these guys, you know, he was the head coach. I mean, my dad was an assistant coach when he came. So what happened was when he got out of Michigan State, as I mentioned earlier, he had the 2-year commitment to the Army. He got stationed down at Fort Benning, was a player coach down there. When it was time to get out, he didn't know quite what to do. He liked coaching, but he wasn't sure that's what he wanted to do. At the time here at ASU, Dan Devine, who later would go on to coach Missouri and then at Green Bay Packers.
So
Dan
Notre
Dan Devine went to
Notre
the
Dame,
Packers.
in
Okay.
Notre Dame.
Oh, in Notre Dame.
Yeah, he coached. Yeah, he
Oh,
went
wow.
Missouri, Green Bay, Notre Dame,
No.
and then he came back here. The president's son angels at ASU.
He still got
Wow.
the best win-loss record at Notre Dame. Dan Devine.
Yeah, so anyway.
Great human being.
So Dan Devine, who happened to be an assistant in Michigan State when my dad was playing there, he knew my dad because they're on the team together. But Dan Devine was talking to Duffy Doherty, one of the assistant coaches. They said, "Hey, I need a line coach." And Duffy said, "Well, you got to get a hold of Frank Kush. He's getting out of the Army. He's a player coach. He might be a good fit for you." So reached out to my dad. They connected. Dan Devine brought him on as an assistant coach.
Yeah.
And so my dad was an assistant for Dan Devine for 3 years. And then Dan Devine he went undefeated.
Undefeated.
You tell a story.
He went undefeated because of Frank Kush. And the drive, the winning attitude, the integrity that Frank Kush had, put it all together. Dan Devine went undefeated, 10-0. Missouri offered him a huge salary increase. In fact, do you have any idea what Frank made back those days?
85,000.
Well, no, that was the most ever made in his entire year. Back then, I think my dad's paycheck was like $2,500, $2,000 annual. 25.
Well, wait,
as an
what do I
assistant.
see
Wow.
here?
Well, that was the most he ever made as a head coach at ASU.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
He was
30 years later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now it would be equated to $6 or $8 million.
Well,
The equivalent in that position, right?
Yeah.
The head coach.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
So,
So 100-fold increase.
so anyway,
Yeah.
Dan Devine gets this great offer to go to Missouri. They're looking for a head coach, and it turns out the athletic director and the president of the university wanted to make my dad the head coach against a lot of fans because my dad was only 28.
Amazing.
28 years old. That is so young.
So they
Right,
made
head coach.
him the
That
head
is so
coach,
young.
and
That's incredible.
And that
he
was-
had 58 season, and he had out of the 21, 22, 23 years at ASU, he only had one losing season. So he was successful, winning record his first year as a head coach even. And
Wow.
so, that started it.
So can we repeat that to the fans? 23 years coach and only 1 year
Losing season.
losing season.
Because a head coach now is in that position maybe 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and he was unusual. I mean, him, Bear Bryant, Woody Hayes, these guys stayed at their universities for 15, 20, 25 years. Joe Paterno.
Yeah.
But most college coaches would move around every 3 to 4 or 5 years. They either move up to a bigger school or maybe go into the pros, but he stuck around.
So
And-
how was he so successful to stay in one spot and be such a winning
Well, he
coach?
was a
What
loyal-
were his secrets?
Well, he was a loyal guy. He liked ASU. He liked Tempe. He had great support from people like Fast and
Fast,
Knapp
yay,
and people.
and Knapp. Next
And
year,
he was a humble guy. I mean, he grew up. His dad was a coal miner. So
$250 a week.
money wasn't a big. Money's always important to everybody, but it wasn't. He liked the environment and everything else like that. He recruited kids. He recruited kids that he could coach.
Explain a little bit about that recruiting process for us that are listening, that we can learn
Well-
how that happens, and because, like you've said, it's all about the athletes.
Well, so
You want a thoroughbred, not a mule.
you want a
Right.
thoroughbred unit.
How do you find
Yeah,
those
my
thoroughbreds?
dad's secret to being a great coach, and people ask me, what's your secret to being a great coach? Have great players. Well, how do you get great players?
Right.
I mean, it's real easy. I can pick up any college sports magazine, and I can see they'll rank the top 50 high school candidates, high school players that are coming into college. And you say, okay, but you're competing against the Alabamas, Ohio States, USC's. The real trick is being able, one, to recognize talent, and to be able to coach and coach up and teach these guys and improve. But it's not just the coaches going out and recruiting, it's having a network of people. I'll use Knapp Lawrence as an example.
So your best friend Knapp Lawrence.
My best
is what-
friend,
So,
Okay.
so
okay.
Knapp Lawrence grew up in Eloy.
Okay.
Knapp did a lot of stuff down at Eloy High School. And so he had very good connections. And so,
I've met him many times. He's
yeah.
really
And so
a
Knapp
great
and
guy.
even Ed, these
Very
guys have been
humble.
around football a lot. They know what a good football player is, good high school prospect is. So Knapp would say, hey, we got this family down here, the Malone family. And, they got some of the kids in the Malone family are really pretty good. It's Eloy, Arizona in the 60s. There's not a lot of press or anything. So they go down, the coaches go down. So you have to have a network and contacts to feed you who some of these star players are. Fast has brought a number of star players to the program just through his connections.
Yes.
And
Woo!
so, but I'll tell the story of the Malone brothers, or Eloy, Arizona. Out of Eloy, it's a little cotton farm town down south of Tempe, Phoenix. They had Art Malone, Benny Malone, Jimmy Malone, Paul Ray Powell. Paul Ray Powell, #1 baseball player in the country one year.
Wow.
Who else came out of there?
Well, Paul Ray also led the nation in scoring
Yeah,
in football.
yeah,
And then he played for the Dodgers.
yeah.
And
So out of this little town in Eloy, they've got something in the water down there. But it's getting back to the question about recruiting. It's you developing a network. My dad did a lot of recruiting back in Pennsylvania and New Jersey because that's where he played high school.
Right.
And then he went to Michigan State and he was like, a god back there. You go back to the barber shop in Windsor, Pennsylvania, where it's like this Frank Kush memorial in the barber shop. But these guys and these coaches, when a good player was coming up, because when you're involved in athletics, as when you're a full-time coach, grew up with it, kids that are 13, 14, they walk onto the field and you can tell just by the way they walk, oh, that kid's an athlete, he's a stud, And the same thing goes with, I helped coach my daughters in club softball from when they were about 10 up till they were 18. And even at the age of 10, 11, 12, even the girls, if you learned what athletic ability was and things like that, you could recognize it in those kids even at that young of age.
Yeah.
I mean, you find these kids, everybody grew up here, so these guys that go to high school games, fast to have, we've got guys that right now, their sons that are high school players, they tell,
yeah,
I mean, who you working on right now? Or,
I can't.
that's right, yeah.
So even though my son said I can't talk about it, both my kids have been varsity from freshman on for 3 sports in high school,
Yeah.
for 3 sports each, and they both went on with college scholarships. For
Yeah, but one of them
the
went to that
sport
other
they
school,
picked.
so we don't count that.
But you mentioned how you'd have players playing in different sports, in
Well,
multiple
yeah.
sports.
Yeah, so I
recruited
mean,
for one, playing
so
another.
back in the 60s, again, 50s and 60s, ASU, it's Arizona State College, Arizona State University, it's Tempe, there's 10,000 people, it's, you drive 5 minutes, you're in the desert. I don't care if you were in Scottsdale, Mesa,
Small town.
everything's small.
Small town.
And so it was tough to get kids to come out. So you would recruit kids that were just great athletes.
Right.
Because if you get a great athlete, you can coach them and do anything. And so my dad worked with the legendary baseball coach, Bobby Winkles, who coached at ASU, 3 national championships?
Yes.
And then went on to, was the general manager of the A's?
Yes.
A's. And but Bobby Winkles, my dad, Ned Wolk, great basketball coach, and Baldy Castile, track. Who was the wrestling coach? Bobby Douglas?
Bobby Douglas.
Bobby Douglas. These guys all worked together and they would go recruit these great athletes that were multi-sport high school athletes.
Yes.
You don't see a lot of that today.
Right.
But you get these multi-sport athletes. So just to give you an example of some names people would probably recognize, great quarterback at ASU, went on and was a quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys, won at least 1, if not 2, Super Bowl.
Yes.
champion.
Who was it?
Danny White.
Oh, Danny White. He spoke at your dad's funeral.
Yeah, he spoke at my dad's funeral.
Oh,
So
he
Danny,
spoke at your dad's
Danny White,
funeral.
great
Yes,
quarterback,
yes.
came out of Mesa Westwood.
Yep.
Local kid.
And he went on to play.
Played for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
But Danny White came to ASU on a baseball scholarship. Because Bobby Winkles wanted him. He was a
That's
great
right.
baseball player. He was an okay football player. So they shared Danny White. And then another great example was there's a baseball guy. His nickname was Mr. October. He played for the Oakland
Reggie
A's.
Jackson.
Yeah, so Reggie Jackson. So
Reggie Jackson.
So Reggie Jackson, home run king is Mr. October. I think he still holds the records for number of home runs in the World Series or something.
Absolutely.
He's,
So anyway,
incredible.
but Reggie Jackson came to ASU as a safety defensive back on a football scholarship. But these
amazing.
guys shared the players because they were just great athletes. So the key to recruiting is having a great network. You go and recruit athletes.
Yes.
And then you can teach them, train them, have them do whatever you want, and my dad had no hesitation about putting the best. One of his philosophies was he'd put your 11 best athletes out on the field.
Yes.
And so if you have a guy that's a really great athlete, but maybe he's not quite as good as that starting quarterback or that starting wide receiver, he's sitting on the bench. But that guy is a better athlete than 5 of the other guys on the field. So my dad was to put your 11 best athletes on the field at once. So one of the best examples of that, and there are 2 great examples of that, and the They were okay with it right now. At least they say that to my face. But a gentleman named Bruce Hardy. He was a quarterback in high school in Utah. He was actually on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And
as a high school player.
Everyone knows who Bruce Hardy is, yes.
Yeah, so he comes to ASU as a quarterback. And after his freshman year, the guys that were starting ahead of him were just a little bit better, a little bit more mature. But Bruce was this great athlete, this big stud. And so my dad moved him to tight end. And to go from quarterback to tight end is like, you feel like you're probably getting demoted about 2 or 3 levels down, wouldn't you say, Ed?
Absolutely, but the funniest story about that is he was a 6'1" quarterback in high school. When he showed up, he was 6'8".
Yeah.
Wow.
He grew 7 inches from high school to college.
Wow.
And back then, we didn't have 6'8" quarterbacks.
No, or tight ends.
Yeah.
And so my dad,
phenomenal guy.
but he's such a great guy, such a great athlete, he moves him to tight end because he was way better than any tight end we had. So you're going to go put your 11 best guys. So he has a great career. He becomes an All-American. He goes down and has a phenomenal career with the Miami Dolphins as a tight end. You know, he still probably hates my dad for moving from quarterback. And the other example I want to give on that is a gentleman named Mike Haynes, who is an NFL Hall of Fame safety defensive back. Mike Haynes came from California and was a wide receiver. And they had some injuries at defensive back. Mike Haynes is kind of, second team because there's some great receivers ahead of him. And one of the coaches, Larry Quintera, how old's Larry now? Got 94.
98.
So
he's old.
he's almost old as Betty White.
Yeah.
But
Seriously.
No,
he had her 99th birthday.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah. So anyway,
birthday, Betty.
Larry Quintera goes, Coach, I need somebody to defensive back. Well, Mike Haynes, he's the number 2 guy, and he could start for the defense. So they started. Well, he goes again, becomes an All-American at ASU. Goes and plays for the New England Patriots for 10 years, and then goes to play for the Oakland Raiders for a couple of years for Al Davis, and then retires. And 5-6 years ago, he gets inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame.
NFL Hall of Fame.
And so they shared athletes. Curly Culp.
Curly Culp. I love that story from Yuma.
Curly Culp, a kid from Yuma.
Tell that story. Love that story.
So a kid from Yuma. You want to tell the Curly Culp story?
Tell it.
Well, the guy was a phenom.
He's a wrestler.
Nose guard and wrestler. Wrestler kind of on the side. We all go down to watch the heavyweight championship bout in America, NCAA. So we sit down, we get all relaxed. He gets up there and he pins the guy in 15 seconds.
Yeah. It becomes
and pinning in heavyweights doesn't happen.
Yeah, and this is for the national championship.
For the national championship.
He's the heavyweight champion in the U.S. in the NCAA. But he's a kid from Yuma that through the network, they found him. Yuma, you think about Yuma, how much.
Right.
So anyway.
Wow.
And then he has a great career. He's an All-American at ASU in football as well. He's an All-American in 2 sports. He gets drafted, I think, by Houston Oilers or Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chief.
Wow.
As a nose guard. He goes on and has a great career for Kansas City and then Houston. And he's also in the NFL Hall of Fame. But he, again, another multi-sport athletic guy. And these guys are the salt of the earth. They're great guys. They're great people. And but that was, get great players. Well, what's a great player? A great athlete, someone that's coachable, somebody that plays multiple sports. And then you develop them, you coach them. My dad was always a teaching coach. Yeah. He had guys to do the X's and O's. He was good X's and O's guys. But he was also a great teacher. He would work with individuals on fundamentals and skill. We always worked on fundamentals in practice. I mean, every day of practice when I played, we spent 15 minutes at all these different stations where everybody went through all the drills and you were just learning the fundamentals, footwork. It didn't matter if I was a kicker. I had to learn how to block. I had to learn how to tackle, and you just.
Is that so you were ready for another position?
Well, it's just fundamentals of the game: balance, coordination, that sort of thing. It wasn't for everybody did it, and then we had great conditioning, fundamentals, conditioning, and great athletes, and you'd coach them up and eliminate the mental mistakes, and then you
so
go out.
When someone made a mistake, I want to bring up that your dad was known for being a tough coach. And I think that's amazing because I think the tough coaches bring you, to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So, tough coach, what were his fundamentals for, like, if someone made a mistake, what would happen?
Well, so
That's a good question.
yeah, so the thing that would really, really tick my dad off was players who would make mental mistakes. So what's a mental mistake? You jump off sides, and so there's a 5-yard penalty for jumping off sides because you just jumped off sides. You know when the count is, you know when the ball's going to be snapped. You miss a block. Everybody has, if you're on offense, you have all these blocking assignments. If you missed a block, if you dropped a pass that, I'm not talking about one where you had to do a one-arm reach and lay yourself out. I'm talking about something that was like right
Easy.
there. It hits you in the hands
It's right there.
and you drop it. That's just a lack of concentration. So that's a mental mistake.
Interesting.
Defense, not as many on defense, but poor tackling. There's some fundamentals to tackling. And if you do it right, I don't care if you're a 150-pound guy and the guy coming at you is 200 pounds, you can tackle him. It's kind of like the little judo guy, If you learn the technique and practice the technique, you should be good to go. But so eliminating the mental mistakes, and if you jumped off sides or made a mistake like that, if you were up at camp, you'd get a mountain. There's this mountain.
Okay, so the punishments were?
Just either if you were at Camp Tonazona, which was like preseason camp, there's a mountain called Mount Kush, and you had to, if you screwed up, you went up that mountain after practice.
Oh, wow.
This is after all the sprints and all the conditioning. You had to go up there. Plus,
How many times?
well, just one time for each mistake. But the problem is,
For each mistake. Oh my gosh.
your position coach had to go up with it. So not only was it an embarrassing thing, you had to go up and they had to go up there to make sure you did it. If you were down here practicing in the valley, you'd get a stadium. And what a stadium is, like if you look at a stadium, there's the two sidelines and then they kind of curve around the end. Well, a stadium is you start where the bleachers are straight and you would go up, you'd have to run up, then jog down. Then go over to the next one, run up and jog down, run up and jog. Usually there was about 6 or 7 aisles you'd have to go up and run up. So you'd get a stadium.
That's
And
a lot of work.
Well, yes, but it helped you get in better condition. It also helped you mentally learn not to make those mistakes. And then there was this
No, I agree with it.
so you
I
had
agree
this
with
other
it.
thing called the hamburger drill. You missed a tackle, missed a block, or you blocked poorly, you'd basically then have to go yourself against 11 guys on the defense or vice versa. And so he was tough, and a lot of guys walked out of camp though.
I know there was a lawsuit, but he was exonerated about being too tough.
Yeah.
And now he's like this big hero. How do you feel about? Do you ever think he was too tough?
No, not at the time.
No.
It was the difference between winning and losing. And
You want to be a winner.
you want to be a winner.
I agree.
It's to this day, people still talk about him. He passed 3.5 years ago, and people still talk about him being the greatest coach in the history of Arizona State University. Well, that was because his win-loss record was very good. His number of players he put into the NFL and the Canadian football
How many
league.
players went to the NFL?
I think 127, 128.
With 5 starting quarterbacks at once.
Yeah, he had at one point in time he had 5 starting quarterbacks
Wow.
not starting quarterbacks that were on active roster. But you only carry 1 or 2 quarterbacks.
Right.
And
That's a huge deal.
so Ed, from your perspective,
Yes.
this is from the inside, me living with the guy and stuff like that. What did you see from the outside that made him? Why were you guys behind him, and why was he successful? What did you guys see from the outside?
Great question.
He was so unique. There was one Frank Kush.
Only
Example,
one.
we lost a game back east. He told the plane pilot to land in Kansas on the way home. He didn't want to wait. Found a high school football team and made the team work out.
On the way home.
On the way home. Stop on the way. Who's ever heard of doing anything like
Wait,
that?
hold on. Hold on. He made the team stop to work
He had
out.
the pilot fly down and land the plane and got the kids out.
Like
to
in
work
Wichita,
out. Yeah, in
found
Wichita.
a high school field
Stadium.
Yeah.
that they wouldn't turn the lights on. He was so pissed off, he didn't want to wait till they got back to Tempe.
Yeah.
So they
Really?
literally got off the plane and went out and practiced.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and there's been at least one or two other occasions where we lost a game at home, and we'd take the bus from Sun Devil Stadium back to Goodwin Stadium because that's where we dressed. He'd turn the lights on in Goodwin Stadium and we'd go practice for an hour and a half
Yeah.
Because you lost.
because we lost,
Yeah.
Because he wants to win.
because we didn't execute.
Next game.
We didn't show up. We weren't into it mentally, and he was not going to let that happen again.
So,
I mean,
Danny Kush, can we talk about how you, as a son of Frank Kush, became this like amazing football player, and you had a winning kick?
I wouldn't say.
I know you're humble. I know you're humble, but there's a winning kick that people talk about, and you
Well,
have a whole kick.
Yeah, so I was at the right place at the right time. Growing up with him, I kind of knew what the expectations were for players.
Yes.
Just having, gone to practice, gone on away games with the team, seen other guys. And so, me and my brother David, I have two younger brothers, David and Damien.
He's an anesthesiologist,
David's an anesthesiologist.
amazing athlete.
He's the athlete of the family. I just happen to be at the right place at the
You're
right time.
humble, okay.
But so I was a kicker in high school. I was a good kicker. I was all central and second all state. I was good, but not great. And so they were up at camp. I wasn't going to I had no intention of playing college football. I was signed up to go to engineering school, and I was going to be an engineer, graduate from ASU.
Amazing engineer, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, they were up at camp, and the kid that was the kicker was a little bit flaky. Kickers for all head cases. I mean, kicking is 90% mental, 10% physical. So anyway, so they were up at camp, and the kid was just not cutting it for him, and they go, we got to find another kicker. And so one of the assistant coaches said, well, what's Dan doing? Because they all knew I kicked, And all the families, we all knew each other because we'd go do holidays together. We'd go on ski trips together. Anyway, they go, what's Dan doing? He's being a bum. I work for City of Tempe Parks and Rec as a pool manager and a lifeguard. He's just being a bum, being a lifeguard. And well, he can kick for us. Literally, this year was my freshman year. We had Danny White, Woody Green,
Wow.
Benny Malone. All they needed was somebody that could consistently kick extra points and one or two short field goals here, because we had this stud offense, probably one of the greatest offenses players we ever had. And so they said, well, Dan can kick. I hadn't worked out. I hadn't done anything since November, since I finished up high school. I worked at camp, have a bad camp. And so I don't even dress for the first game. The other kid comes in, he misses an extra point and a field goal. That was it. I started every game for the next 4 years. But as a player, it's like, okay, I'm now on the team. My dad's the head coach, and I'm smart enough to realize that I'm not going to let anybody say that I'm on the team because my dad's the head coach.
Right. Yes.
So I practiced my butt off, and
Right.
so I practiced a lot. We'd get into, as soon as we got through Memorial Day at the end of May, I called my kicking coach, Craig Milbrandt, over at McClintock High. He was a teacher at McClintock High. And in June, we'd start kicking, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And in July, we'd go to 4 or 5 times a week. We'd get into August every day. And then once we're in the season, multiple times a day. So, and like I said, I was a good kicker in college. I didn't have a lot of distance. If I got out past about 45 yards, I really started to struggle. But inside of 45, 40 yards, I was very accurate. And we always had great offenses. So I just, needed to make a few kicks here and there and do that. But,
And those are 2 great takedowns of the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
well, so we ended up playing, that was early on when the Fiesta Bowl started. So my
Pep
friend.
Cooney had a lot to do with that.
So anyway, my freshman year with Danny White, Woody Green, those guys, ASU played in the first 5 Fiesta Bowls, I think. So my freshman year, I played in the Fiesta Bowl 3, and then my junior year, we were undefeated. We were going to the Fiesta Bowl, and Nebraska was selected to play against us, and so we're playing Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl. They're definitely we're both teams are in the top 10, and it was a great game. Went back and forth. Tom Osborne was the coach of Nebraska, and ended up having 3 field goals in the game. I kicked the first field goal in the game, so it was 3-0. Then they came back, got a touchdown, so it was 7-3. Then the last play of the first half, I kicked a second field goal, and so we go into halftime 7-6. But because of the conditioning and everything else like that, we're in the locker room, and there was this confidence that, oh, holy crap, we're tied with these guys, this great team, 7-6. We're going to win this game because we knew we could outplay anybody in the second half. So we go out there, we kick off to them, they get the ball.
And that's your dad's coaching, Frank Kush.
Yeah, so they run it down our throat. So now it's 14-6. And so we keep playing, and then actually our starting quarterback, Dennis Spell, got hurt, so Fred Mortensen comes in as quarterback, who happened to be a teammate of mine at Tempe High. And Fred throws a touchdown pass to John Jefferson, then a 2-point conversion to Larry Marker, I think. So now it's 14-14. And Dennis Sprouse gets back into the game. And so it goes back and forth. We get down towards the end of the game. 2.5 minutes left, and we go down. It's 3rd and 5 or something. My dad calls this little dive play to the right, and I'm a little irritated because I go, I'm not going to get the first down. Anyway, he was just trying to move the ball to the center of the field to give me the best shot at kicking the field goal. So 4th down, I go in and...
So he helped you get that kick.
Yeah, but I didn't know it at the time. I was pissed at him because I knew we wouldn't get a first down, and I wanted us to get a touchdown. I didn't want to have to go in and kick the field goal. So go in, and it wasn't long. It was like 30-yard field goal. It was short, but great snap, great hold. Bruce Hardy was the holder. Jimmy Heilig was the center. Those guys were always automatic. I never had to worry about the snap or the hold ever. And the line blocked great, so just I hit it, went right down the middle between the goalposts, and so now we're ahead 17-14, and the game, they get the ball, they're coming down the field, and then a kid that was the same class as me, Rocky Motley, tackles one of the Nebraska guys, the running back. Guy fumbles the ball. John played for the Seattle Seahawks. He recovered the fumble, and that was the end of the game. We got the ball, and that was the end of the game. And I just
You're a rock star.
no, I'm not a rock star. I just had a lot of
He's
practice,
right.
a lot of preparation, right place at the right time, and we won the game. And that was when ASU beat Nebraska. That really put us on the national map. Wouldn't you say, Ed?
Absolutely. Well, we were the only undefeated team. He didn't mention this. Only undefeated team in America.
Wow.
And ASU has not been undefeated since that game, 1975. That was the year I met my wife in August of 75. She had just moved out from Chicago. I said, do you like football? I was dating her, and she says, yeah, we go to see Northwestern. I said, well, have you ever seen Northwestern win? She says, I've never seen a winning football game, but I like football. So I said, well, I'll take you to ASU game. We went to every game. Danny kicks straight on, the old-fashioned way.
Yep.
Everybody else kicks sideways.
Yeah.
Danny
Straight
puts
on.
it through. We stayed up all night. With 7 o'clock in the morning, we were still celebrating that victory, undefeated.
And we
And
beat
Well,
Nebraska.
it's a legendary
if
game
I
that
get
you won.
Alzheimer's, I'll never forget that night.
I would,
What year was that you won that?
75.
75.
Yeah,
Wow.
so again, right place, right, it's just one of those unique opportunities, the perfect storm. And, those, when you're in high school and a kid growing up, you always want to be that guy bottom of the ninth and hit the walk-off home run with the bases loaded, you know, or catch the winning, you know, thing, you know. And so I was just happened to be fortunate, right place, right time, and I prepared a lot. You know, there was a lot of practice, a lot of kicking. You know, it's kind of muscle memory. It's like making that 4-foot putt. You should make it, right?
Should make it every time.
Every time.
Go.
So I feel God is watching, and because I'm very, you know, I believe in God, and I believe that your parents are in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to your mom and dad for how you have your life and what He's taught you? Your mom and dad.
Thanks for all the opportunities, and thanks for developing a great work ethic, and thank you for also learning how to be humble, or not, you know, don't have an ego, because you know what, there's always somebody bigger, faster, better than you are, you know, and just be a nice guy, I mean, you know, I haven't pissed off too many people, I don't think.
Everybody loves Danny.
Ed's great. Ed, I was fortunate, Ed and I.
Everybody loves Eddie too.
Yeah, they do. I mean, we got some history on different things. In fact, I don't know, 2-3 years ago for ASU homecoming, Ed always drives the Grand Marshal in the ASU homecoming parade. So, so this one year I was the Grand Marshal of the homecoming parade, and so Ed and I met up and we go cruising around, puts down the top on his beautiful red Camaro, and I sit on the back, and I say, Ed, don't hit the brakes too hard, because I'll slide up and be sitting in the front seat with you. But we had a great time, and then we got lost somewhere.
Yeah, it was almost like Animal House. I didn't know what to do after the parade was over.
If it's with Eddie,
Yeah.
it is Animal House.
Yeah.
So Super Bowl's about to come here. We're about to have Super Bowl, 2 weeks from now?
I believe so, yeah.
3
And-
weeks.
February 7th.
And how do you guys feel about should football change for the safety of it? For, you know, everybody's talking about, oh, it's not good, and we have the doctor here. So I want to get your 2 cents, the doctor's 2 cents, and how you think, should football change, or do you think we should keep it the same? Should we get more stringent with rules about safety? You know, with head injuries. What do you guys think about that?
Well,
And John.
Yeah.
Well, now we know about this concussive encephalopathy that
Yeah.
some of these players are developing.
Yeah.
The helmets are getting better, but like you said, between the 50s, 60s, and today, the players are 100 pounds heavier, so they're hitting harder, and the tissue is still made of tissues. These
Yeah.
people aren't necessarily stronger.
Yeah.
So higher impact, but better equipment. What's the overall balance?
Well, I mean, football's a physical game, just like hockey's a physical game.
Right.
Yes.
And you can only provide so much protection based on it without significantly changing the game.
Right.
And so I think the NFL and college and down to the high school level, they've done a great job of educating the coaches, the players, the trainers. They've made huge strides in equipment. This weekend, you know, Pat Mahomes, Kansas City quarterback, got a concussion, and it's outside of the coaches and the players and the Kansas City Chiefs. He has to go through the NFL concussion protocol. So if he doesn't pass that protocol, even though he feels good and wants to play, the NFL will not let him play.
Oh,
Interesting.
wow.
So
Interesting.
they, for their own protection, and this is division champ, this is the AFC championship game, you know, and he probably felt great after the game, but I think they've done about what they can do. It's just awareness of concussions.
Awareness. I love it. Awareness.
And injuries. I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, you know, it just, you get a cut, it's like, hey, wrap it up with some tape or spit on it, rub some dirt in it and go back out, you know, sort of a thing. And a lot of that's changed because they're realizing that because it is a physical game, not only from the concussion in your brain, there are a lot of long-term, you know, issues with joints. I mean, a lot of the guys I know have had knees replaced, hips replaced, shoulders replaced. This is a
But
physical
even
game.
any sport, it's that way. Like runners.
Yeah, depending on what the sport is, but I think football is more physical than most, other than hockey.
Right.
I think those two sports in themselves are just there's just a lot of physical contact. And that's just part of the game, and that's why people love it. It's
What do you think
today's
about those
gladiators. It's today's gladiators.
Doctor,
Yeah.
do you have any insight on that?
Well, I agree. It's today's gladiators. It's hard to make that sport safe if it's still going to be that sport.
Yeah.
But we're doing a lot better, and I think those patients are still predisposing themselves to a lot of risk.
Yeah.
As are a lot of folks in my profession. I'm exposed to radiation all the time,
Yeah.
but I suck it up because I want to be in that role.
Right.
I mean, we make
You know the risk.
we make career decisions.
You have
and
more
move
risk than
forward.
that because sometimes you have night calls and you get no sleep and
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah, my
have blood
brother.
risk. There's like you're doing a surgery and you told me there's like blood that's like
Well, sure. I mean, you get the next patient has HIV, or
Yeah.
you know, and you now actually know not to
It's
do
lots of
needle
risk.
stick.
Yeah,
If
there's
you do,
risk,
You
you
got to
know.
take care of it. And
It's risk of the profession.
it's heavy, and you want to be in that role. There's things you got to do.
Yeah. So, you know, it's
worth the risk because we love
So in the
football.
50s and 60s, a lot of these guys, a big player was 220, 250 pounds, right, Ed? I mean,
Absolutely.
and now these guys are 300, 350, 380, and they're fast. So I'm an engineer, so just from a physics standpoint, you got a lot more mass, going a lot faster. But to your comment earlier, you know, bone tissue is tissue. It's bone is still bone, muscle, tendon, ligaments. They're still the same they were 100 years ago.
Right.
But now the collisions, the impacts are a lot greater because they're bigger and they're moving a lot faster.
So what do you think are the solutions?
Well, one of the
That's not
solutions is not going live 3 days a week in practice. There's a lot of NFL teams that I don't think go live at all during the week, and they only go, they'll go live a little bit in camp, preseason, but after that, it's just the only time they go live is in the games, just to minimize those impacts,
That's
those
good.
collisions,
Right.
and those sort of things. I mean, as a fan, what have you seen change from
Well, I like that new rule where if you tackle with your head and your helmet to helmet, they'll kick you out of the game. They'll give you 15 yards, and I think that's a good
I mean,
rule.
Ed's a great example. Ed, when he played football in high school, as he mentioned earlier in the interview, he was at Chandler High Wolf, and his senior year was the last year that they just wore helmets. There was no face mask.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Crazy.
and the helmets, were they leather?
No, I was bad. They were plastic.
Plastic, yeah. But even if you looked at, like, when I was in college, the suspension inside the helmet was basically cloth straps with some leather around that, so the leather was up against your forehead, but it was like a cloth cotton strap suspension
Yes.
was all there was in the helmet.
Right.
You know, and it was really, the helmet was designed.
And how's it different for now for
Oh,
people that don't know?
So they're impact foam, they're air-filled sacks. They custom fit each helmet to each player. They're designed to dissipate energy in the helmet, not in the head.
Right.
You know, and so the whole, head-on head, because it does happen even in today's rules. You'll still have these head-on-head collisions. And what you want to do is try to dissipate as much energy in the helmet
Yes.
and not have it transfer to the head or the neck. And so you do that through different types of materials inside the helmet. There's a lot of science in the helmets. I mean, ASU did a pilot program 3 or 4 years ago where they were working with one of the helmet manufacturers, and they actually put sensors and monitors in the helmets, and the kids would go out and practice. And if the sensor turned red, they pulled them out of practice because they'd received a hit that was above what they thought. They were testing what the right levels were and things.
And
like
that's
that.
great.
Right.
We want to improve things.
Yeah,
And,
well, you want
and,
these
and
everybody
we'll
to be healthy.
continue this conversation because your dad was a legend with football and winning. But here we are in 2021, and we want to keep football around and people loving football, but we also have to keep people safe, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what's very, very, very interesting is when they've had this conversation with the former pro players and they ask them the question, if you had it to do over again, would you do it over again? And guess what? All of
Please,
them,
yes.
100%. I
Yeah.
play football.
And that's a great way to
the
end
love of
this.
the game.
So
The
in the
love
green
of game.
room,
It's
we
a
will
great
continue
game.
this conversation in the green room. It's a beautiful night.
It's a beautiful
Thank you,
night. Thank
James
you.
James Neller.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you. And
Pleasure.
thank you.
Put your level best on the field.
Thank you. Bye. We'll continue this conversation.